What if Daenerys Targaryen had married Sansa Stark instead of Jon Snow? Now, we know that Sansa has been through some rough patches in her life, but you have to admit, she's come out of it all with flying colors. She's become this incredible leader. And while the idea of her marrying Jon may seem like destiny, what if another suitor had entered the picture? Someone with a claim to the Iron Throne. What if Daenerys had proposed to Sansa? The shockwaves sent across Westeros would be immediate and immense. Lords and ladies who had already begun to accept the notion of Jon and Dany together would be left scratching their heads in confusion. Even those who disliked Dany would wonder about the wisdom of such a match. In fact, the whole idea would probably make Cersei Lannister laugh uncontrollably, thinking how she could use it to her advantage. But here's where things get interesting. Would Dany's proposal be a strategic move or something more genuine? It's hard to say. On one hand, she's always wanted the Iron Throne, so marrying into a family with such deep roots in the North makes perfect sense. On the other hand, Sansa is no prize for a woman who's never really seemed all that interested in power. Maybe there's more to the story. Maybe Dany sees something in Sansa that others don't, a hidden strength that could help her secure the Seven Kingdoms. Whatever the reason, when Jon Snow finds out, he'll probably be pretty surprised. After all, he and Dany have been through a lot together, and their relationship seems pretty solid. But then again, Jon is a man who puts duty above all else. So maybe he'll see the bigger picture and understand that this new alliance could benefit everyone. Then there's Tyrion, who would likely be both amused and slightly concerned by the prospect of his queen marrying a Stark. He's a clever guy, though, and he'll probably realize that this could be a good move for them, especially since Sansa knows the North like the back of her hand. Cersei, on the other hand, would probably just laugh at the idea. She's always seen Starks as a bunch of country bumpkins, and she doesn't think they're capable of really hurting her. But as we all know, Cersei tends to underestimate her enemies, and this could be her biggest mistake yet. Now, let's imagine that the unthinkable happens and Sansa actually agrees to marry Dany. What would happen next? Well, for starters, Dany's claim to the Iron Throne would be strengthened immediately. Not only would she have the backing of the Northern Alliance, but she would also gain access to all of the resources and manpower that the North has to offer. And let's not forget about the dragon power. Oh yeah, because now Winterfell has dragons. Can you imagine the look on Cersei's face when Dragon lands in the Red Keep? Sansa, with her knowledge of politics and diplomacy, would be able to navigate the treacherous waters of Westerosi courtly life with ease. Meanwhile, Dany would bring her a game when it comes to military strategy, thanks to her experience leading armies in Essos. Together, they would make a formidable team, and Cersei would have a hard time keeping up. Speaking of Cersei, she would likely try to sabotage the wedding in some way. Maybe she'd send an assassin or hire some unsavory characters to cause trouble. But let's be real, nothing can stop these two determined women from tying the knot. As for the Great War, things would be a lot easier with the combined forces of the North and Daenerys' armies. Plus, imagine the surprise on the White Walkers' faces when they see dragons fighting alongside the Starks. We all know that dragons are effective against the White Walkers because their fire can burn through the whites, and their magic can harm the Night King himself. But the element of surprise would definitely make things more difficult for the army of the dead. It's possible that the battle against the Night King would even happen sooner if these two powerful forces were united. Also, it would be fascinating to see how Sansa's political skills and knowledge of the North would impact the war effort. Maybe she would come up with new strategies for dealing with the White Walkers that we never even thought of. With her keen understanding of the terrain and the people, Sansa could rally the entire realm against the common enemy and lead them to victory. As for Cersei, she'd probably try to take advantage of the chaos and seize even more power for herself. But without the Lannisters' military might, she'd be in for a world of hurt. The combined forces of the North and Dany's armies would be too much for her to handle. Plus, with the dragons on their side, there's no way she could win. After the war, things would look very different for Westeros. A queen consort would rule alongside King Bran, who would most likely still be chosen as king due to his connection to the werewoods and his status as a living god. This new ruling dynamic could usher in an era of prosperity and peace for the realm. With two strong queens at the helm, there would be little room for power struggles and courtly intrigue. And who knows? Maybe Sansa and Dany would prove to be an even more formidable team than Cersei and Jaime were. They would both have to be careful, however, not to become too ambitious and threaten each other's power. It would require a delicate balance of diplomacy and trust to keep the peace. But if they could pull it off, Westeros could finally enter a golden age. But before any of that could happen, there's the small matter of Jon Snow's claim to the Iron Throne to deal with. You see, Jon is the legitimate heir of House Targaryen. And while he may not want to be king, he certainly wouldn't relinquish his claim willingly. This could cause tension between him and his sister, especially since Jon would still hold a grudge against Daenerys for breaking their bond over his refusal to bend the knee. If Dany marries Sansa, it would essentially invalidate Jon's claim to the throne, and that could lead to some serious family drama. It all depends on how well Jon can handle this unexpected twist of events. If he's the honorable and selfless man we know him to be, he'll put his feelings aside and support his sister. But that doesn't mean it'll be easy. There's a lot of history between Jon and Dany, and their shared experiences have forged a bond that couldn't be broken so easily. Still, Jon has always put duty first, and he knows that his sister is right. The North will never bend the knee to anyone, which means Jon's claim to the Iron Throne is dead in the water. The good news is that Jon and Sansa have always had a great relationship, and they've proven that they can work together despite their differences. So it's likely that they'll be able to put this awkward situation behind them and move forward as a united front. Overall, the political fallout of Daenerys marrying Sansa would be nothing short of seismic. For starters, Cersei's attempts to paint Dany as a foreign invader would completely fall apart. Not only would the Starks have been in the Game of Thrones since the beginning, but they also have a legitimate claim to the throne through Sansa's marriage to Aegon. This would throw the entire foundation of Cersei's opposition to Dany into question, and it would be hard for her to spin the tale that the true heir to the throne was a Lannister. Suddenly, Cersei would be the one under pressure to explain why she had usurped the throne and murdered so many members of the royal family. And that's not going to end well for her. In fact, this scenario could result in Cersei losing all of her power and influence. The people of Westeros would finally see her for what she really is, a power-hungry tyrant who would stop at nothing to protect her own interests. And once the veil is lifted, it's hard to see how she could ever regain the public's trust. Meanwhile, the Starks would rise to prominence like never before. The combination of Sansa's political acumen and Dany's military might would make them a force to be reckoned with. There is no doubt that other houses would try to capitalize on this new power dynamic and form alliances with the Starks and Targaryens. The Lannisters, Tyrell, and Baratheon houses would likely be eager to jump ship and pledge their loyalty to the new royal couple. This would solidify the Starks and Targaryens' power and make them nearly unstoppable. So yes, if Daenerys Targaryen had married Sansa Stark instead of Jon Snow, it would have been a shocking development that sent ripples throughout the realm. But in the long run, it could have been a smart move that secured Daenerys' claim to the throne and brought the Seven Kingdoms together in a way that they had never been before. It's hard to say how things would have played out, but one thing is for sure, it would have been an adventure to watch. Alright, comment below. Do you think that Sansa would actually agree to marry Daenerys? Let us know, and don't forget to check out these other videos.